Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Masters of Product Marketing. Today I'm joined by Unique Podar. Unique was born in Senegal, raised in Washington, D.C., and completed his higher education across Europe in France, the UK, and Spain. He recently moved from Silicon Valley to Paris and found a new home working at PayFit, having previously been at Dell and LinkedIn. And he is here today to talk about pricing. Unique, great to have you here, and over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. Really happy to be here. And then hello to everyone. If you guys can hear me well, make sure to just type in your name and where you're dialing from. I'm always excited to see where people are viewing the presentation from. And I'll try to make this as interactive as possible. So when you get a chance, if you have any questions, feel free to put them directly in the chat, and I'll answer them at the end of the meeting, or sometimes through it, depending on how much time we have. So, hey, how's it going, Nathan? See you're coming in from LA. All right, we got Tara from St. Petersburg in Florida. Got some folks from London, Carla and Francisca from Munich. Thank you. Anyone else joining in, just please feel free to say, hey, where you're from, where you're dialing in from. All right, and so I thought it'd be interesting for me to just give a quick snapshot of who I am. My name's Unique. I'm kind of call myself a bit of a global citizen, just because I'm American, I'm French, and I'm also African. As Max mentioned a bit earlier about my background, and I grew up in the Washington D.C. area. Went to business school internationally in the UK, France, Spain. Barcelona was a magical city. And then I started my career actually in B2B sales at Dell Software, B2B SMB sales, then mid-market, then later on enterprise. I then relocated from the Washington, D.C. area to San Francisco, because that's really where I wanted to be, the home of tech, a lot of startups. And I continued my sales journey for about another 4 or 5 years. And then I ended up, pivoting into LinkedIn, and I thought that was a really great entry into product marketing, because right before I left, when I left my sales career, I ended up launching a business teaching people how to use LinkedIn to land their dream job. And then at some point, I realized, well, why not actually pivot and join LinkedIn? Hey, Lola from Denver. Hey. And so later on, after a couple of years working at LinkedIn on the global team for the Talent Solutions business, which is a multi-billion-dollar business, over 200 product marketing managers at LinkedIn at the time. So it was quite exciting to see a behemoth of a company. Obviously not a Microsoft at 100,000, but it was still a pretty good company to see how product marketing is done at scale. And then recently, last year, I decided to relocate to Paris and join a whole new adventure in Europe and in a high-growth startup. And so here I am leading growth and profitability and overall product marketing at PayFit. And good morning, Peyton from SF. I was there for about 5 years, so know that place very well. Outside of that, avid book reader. I also speak in a bunch of business schools on strategy, leadership, and of course, product marketing. And the topic of today is how to price for growth and profitability. And so, if anyone today is having a bit of issues with just the pricing topic, I know it's so complex. Just type in yes, yes, yes. As in this is definitely definitely a big topic. It's not an easy one, and so feel free to type in that in the chat box so people can see you're not alone. I know I wasn't. And so thank you, Nathan. And so for the first question is, why pricing? And pricing is a complex topic. I mean, you see about 29% of startups fail because they've run out of cash, right? It's the unit economics. It's what fuels the business. So it enables you to reinvest in the business, get financing. It's the numbers game at the end of the day, right? Trust the numbers. You got to over 97% of all pricing increases fail, says Simon Kucher, which as a great consulting firm, that is specialized in commercial pricing strategies, whether it's B2B, B2C, and so on. And so, basically, I think everyone is here because that pricing strategy can make or break the business. It can help you grow sustainably, healthily, with profitable with profits, or it could really put you in a bit of a pickle to a point where you can't really sustain the business model. And so it's a really important discussion that we need to have over and over again. And just to set the bar, I mean, pricing, it's the quantity of payment or compensation given by one party to another in return from one unit of goods or services. And this is the piece that's really interesting. I liked this Wikipedia definition is price is influenced by production costs, also by supply of the desired item and demand of the product. So pricing may be determined by monopolists or may be imposed on the firm by market conditions. So as you can see right from this definition, it's a tough topic. Hi, Lawrence from Manchester. I lived in Liverpool for 3 years, so I know Manchester very well. Moving on. And so, it's really clear that some companies got it right. You have some great companies out there, recognizable brand. They're growing, they're scaling. You guys they're expanding internationally. They're deepening into specific verticals. You know their names. You use some of their products, or you haven't, or someone uses their products, and overall that they got something right. And so the really one of the topics to discuss about is that there are effective ways of determining your pricing strategy, and there are less effective ways of doing it. When you first start out, you're really using out your gut feeling. It's sort of like an emotional decision. Sometimes you don't really have the time to have a cross-functional conversation with product, marketing, sales, ops, finance, and so you're really kind of a couple of you guys are sitting down and ladies, and you're trying to make this work. And obviously at the beginning that works, but later on that might become a problem when you have a much more mature business. You have a lot of customers, you're in multiple segments, multiple countries. And so moving over to the effective side is really starting to be more data driven, is getting feedback directly from customers, getting feedback directly from the sales team if you have a B2B model with a sales force. And it's just making sure you get cross-functional buying, because the worst thing you can do is set something, a new pricing strategy, and then your product team is not able to really shift those new different features and different pricing plans, or your billing department is not able to bill in a certain way you want to bill, and it's an absolute nightmare because sales team is not bought in, and you can get how this becomes a big problem really quickly. And so your number one job here as a product marketer is to, one, understand the cost of business operations. You need to. And I know sometimes by default, we're not in these conversations, but we have to understand the cost of the business operations. We have to understand the market dynamics and the trends, and we do need to understand customers willing to pay so that we can make a decision for growth and profitability, and then monitor performance, get feedback, and make adjustments along the way. So it's quite a handful. It's a serious topic. It's an important topic. And probably one of the questions that you're wondering is, what are the kind of things that you'll take away from this call? The first one is, I think I'm already kind of really going into this, is that pricing has a strategic weight in the business, and you have to understand it. Second is, it's important to understand when and even why to revise your pricing strategy. 3 is, where do you start? It's a tough pickle, and so at what point do you start to tackle the issue? Where do you start to do it? How do you do it? How do you get alignment from your cross-functional partners? You have a lot of folks that need to be at the table to take part in this decision, because you need to move as a unit. And then 5, you also need to make sure you enable your sales team, if you do have a sales team, so that they're comfortable in launching this new pricing grid, in terms of pitching it, in terms of having battle cards, pitch decks, so on. And 6, you want to track performance and make adjustments along the way. And so those are the kind of things we'll be making sure you guys take away with today. Now, maybe one question you might have is, why am I presenting this topic? And the number one reason is I just recently joined about 9 months ago PayFit, which is a phenomenal company in Europe. They're in multiple countries. They're ranked number 4 in startups in LinkedIn, and on many other as well platforms and ranking systems. And essentially, we're a B2B. We're a B2B software that's really focused on helping small businesses digitalize, or I should say, pay their employees much faster, much easier, especially with the complexity of a payroll in these different markets. And so, when I joined, the company has been growing incredibly fast, over 4,000 companies, 500 pay fitters. We started to expand in multiple countries. So as you can imagine, the conversation of pricing became, more and more important. Do we price in the same way in these different countries? Do we focus on specific segments and verticals? Do we focus on specific sizes of company for pricing strategy? And so that became one of the biggest projects I had to tackle when I first started. And who is this presentation for? Well, it's anyone that's, whether you're VP, you're head of product marketing, you just joined a new business. One of your first action items is to review kind of the pricing strategy, or you're a product marketer on the ground. You've been assigned to really run through this pricing exercise, or you're potentially a cross-functional partner and you just really want to understand more about this experience. And whether you're pre-product market fit, I see Suchita mentioned she's kind of an early stage startup with no sales team. So, whether you're product market fit, or you're high growth, or potentially you're starting to see declining sales. I mean, at the end of the day, there's quite a few things that you can take from this presentation. And one of the things I really want to make sure everyone understands, like, take your time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you won't be able to completely overhaul your pricing strategy in a day as well. It won't, it could take, for some companies, depending on the size of your business, depending on the legal restrictions, depending on so many other factors, market dynamics. I mean, for some, it could take 6 weeks, for others, 6 months, for others, a whole year. It really depends. And so at the end of the day, this is a project that's going to take a little bit of a while to tackle. One disclaimer is, take what you need, throw away the rest. Every business is different. Every market is different. I can't guarantee success just because you sat down and went through this presentation and asked some questions. But what I do want to make sure is that you do have some very interesting points to take away with some specific action items or areas you can start for that could, evolve or improve your pricing strategy. You'll have some that are B2B. You have some folks that are B2C. I mean, it's going to be a little bit tough to make sure everyone gets something, walks away with everything. But what's most important for me is that you walk away with something that gets you closer to improving your strategy. And so the topic is how to price for growth and profitability. Pricing can be really complex. You got some people that get into the whole psychology of pricing. You got dynamic-based pricing. I mean, there's so many different approaches and philosophies to it. What I'm really focusing on today is how to price for growth and profitability. And so, the first thing you should want to ask yourself is, when should you consider reviewing your pricing strategy? Now, there are many, many turning points. There's different points throughout your career, throughout the life cycle of the business or the product, that you want to potentially raise your hand and say, hey, let's review how we're doing. When you just launched the business, that's where you probably want to be hyper alert and understand what's happening, what's converting, what's not, why we're winning deals, why we're losing deals. You've reached a certain milestone. Your sales team, if you have one, is losing too many deals. You're getting specific feedback from your sales team about certain topics. You're entering a new market you never entered before. You're starting to see your customers churning, whether you're B2B or B2C. You're expanding your product portfolio. You're adding a whole new vertical. That's a good time to revise your pricing strategy to make sure you get everything right. Maybe you just got acquired by a company. You just got a new leadership team on board, or you just have a clear problem and the lights are siren and you need to make a change. And so first thing here you want to take away is that there can be multiple pivotal turning points where it's a good time to take a double click into your pricing strategy. And so I'll give you a few steps that I believe will give you a really good understanding of how to approach this problem. And the first step is to stay close to the numbers. It's just like, make sure you're data driven. And the reason why you want to stay close to the numbers is that you want to be able to recognize when there is a pricing problem. Is your sales team discounting too much in a specific pricing plan? If you have a pricing model of your basic plan, professional plan, premium plan, let's say, are 50% of your customers on the premium plan, well, that might be a problem. That might be potentially that your pricing is too low, or maybe that you have room to create another more premium offer. Do you have 80% of your customers on your basic plan? Well, that could potentially mean that like you have actually opportunities to upsell customers. Is there a reason why they're not being upsold? Is there a reason why a majority of your customers are on that basic plan? Are you losing too many deals to the competition in general? That could be a big problem, right? Or do you have negative gross margins? And if you're not close to the numbers, you won't be able to see these things. And so your partner in crime here should be biz ops, sales ops, anyone, if it's not yourself, that has access to these data, so you can see specifically the demographics of your different customers, where they fall into your specific pricing plans. And then you want to make sure you have that close relationship with sales team as well to understand, why we're winning, why we're losing deals, and so on. And a couple of tips is, typically for those of you that might have like those 3 different pricing plans, or you have your basic level, you have your professional level, you have your advanced or premium level, typically what you want to see is about 25% on that entry level price. You want to see then a bigger, healthier 50% in the center on that mid level, and then you want to see another 25% premium. You could play around with those numbers, but typically, I could just look at just how revenue is coming from the different pricing plan and the different composition of the customers across those pricing plan, and I can already see that there could be a problem. Hello, Zoe from Paris, and you have about if you have about 80% of your customers, like I mentioned, on, for example, your premium plan, it definitely means that there's room for improvement. It means that potentially your pricing your product is too cheap, or you have room to create another offer, like I mentioned. If you have more than 50% on your basic plan, like I mentioned, you could be offering a value you could be offering already too much value on your first plan, which is why there's no specific reason to move on to the next plan. And so you want to make sure you're reviewing that value on the first plan. Potentially, could you move some of those features into the next plan, or potentially there's a gap, whereas this next plan doesn't have quite a lot of value added compared to the jump in price. And so all these things are just great indicators for you to understand what's happening, but you can't do it if you're not close to the numbers. Next is step 2 is pick a place to start. This place is going to be really interesting, because I get a lot of folks that ask, hey, do we start with market trends? Do we look at our own conversion rates? Do we talk to sales? Do we look at the competitive landscape, what they're doing? Do we talk to our customers? Do we talk to finance and look at our gross margins? Like, there's so many different areas you can start from to understand what to do. And so regardless of where you're starting, you'll need to know these 3 things. One is that you need to understand what it's costing you to operate the business. Second, you need to understand what the market is doing. And third, you need to understand what the customers are willing to pay. Now, you can do that yourself. You can do it through data. You can do it through a sales team if you have a sales team, or customer success team if you have one. But you need to be able to understand these 3 things so that you can make a decision on the best pricing strategy for growth and profitability. And when we're looking at growth and profitability, that goes into step 3. And I'll have a recap of all the 7 steps. We'll have a great time at the end to just kind of talk about any questions you have. But step 3 is you want to aim for growth and profitability. And so let's sit down and really let's make sure we understand the difference. So growth means that you're acquiring more customers. However, you're doing that at negative margins, which means with every customer that you get, your profitability margins continue to decrease, which means it's not sustainable. I'll have a couple examples on that one. Profitability, which means that you're acquiring more customers with positive margins, which means that as you acquire more customers, your profitability increases. You're more sustainable. You have more capital to reinvest into the business. You're more attractive when you're going to investors to raise money, right? You're not in the red light. You're clearly going in the right direction. And so we want to focus on a model pricing strategy that gives you both growth, as in numbers, and it also makes you profitable. That means that your margins are really well placed, that you're always making money with every sale you're making. Now, I'll give you a couple cases of why this is a problem. So the case of Sony. I don't know if you guys are any gamers out here, but Sony PlayStation back in the days released PlayStation 3 console. Big problem here is that it was this revolutionary product, equipped with Blu-ray technology. It was priced competitively for the market. The big problem is that it was losing money with every sale. And their strategy was basically, well, we'll lose money on the console, but we'll make up for the money on the game sales, like the actual individual games. As you can see, that's a very slippery slope. It's a complex model. I would definitely recommend that you don't go in that direction, because yes, you can get growth, but as you can see, it didn't work out. It wasn't sustainable. They later pivoted and released a slimmer PS3, PlayStation 3 version without all the bells and the whistles. Because why? Xbox and all the other players, Nintendo, didn't quite have that technology. But it looks like the market as well wasn't necessarily needing it. People weren't necessarily buying Blu-ray disc and watching Blu-ray movies and so on back in the days. I don't know if I'm kind of dating myself or if everyone's getting the concept here, but essentially they were selling something at a negative margin. Second one is the case of electric scooter, the sharing economy right now, and honestly, it's taken the cities by storm. A lot of people are using them. They're using them multiple times a day. They're having growth in numbers, having growth in scale. They're entering other markets. I mean, they're doing a phenomenal job from a growth standpoint. However, it has a steep operating cost. It's an expensive hardware equipment. It needs to be continually replaced. And it's a fragile business model, which is not sustainable. And so we'll see where that goes. But you have a lot of companies that had similar business models in different markets that end up going bankrupt. And so we're all going to pay really close attention to what all these scooters are going to be doing. But it doesn't look too bright right now. Conversely, you have other examples like Ford that also had these kind of bikes that they have. However, they know they're losing money on the bikes, but the end goal is really to get access to the data so that they can create better products later on. Because obviously they're a behemoth. They have a ton of cash and they can afford to do something like that. When you're a startup, you can't. It's risky business. And so when is there a business model issue? Well, you have three examples. You can be growing but not profitable. You can be profitable but not growing, or you can be profitable and growing. And your pricing strategy is going to help you do that. So in the first example, you're selling a lot, you're making tons of revenue, but you're not making profits, you're losing money with every sell. In the second one, you're not necessarily selling a lot, but every sell that you're making is profitable, which means potentially it's a high price, so not a lot of customers, but you're profitable, you're not growing, but you're profitable. Third is you're growing fast, you're profitable, and that's the holy grail. That's where you want to be. Now, questions you'll want to ask yourself, and we'll go into this entire phase together, is how much is this costing you to create the product? So you just have to understand how much it's costing you, hosting fees, so on. How much is it costing you to sell it? Your marketing budget, your sales team, and so on. How much is it costing you? How much is a customer worth for you, as in the customer lifetime value? What does it mean? How much can you spend because you're going to get a certain return back on the customer? And your goal is to basically do the math. You want to make sure the gross margin is the difference between the revenue and the cost, and you have solid revenue. And so basically, I'll give you an example, is that you have like your cost of goods sold, so hosting fees, customer success, so on. You got your revenue, so understanding how much you can make with that first customer, like that customer in your first year, and overall the customer lifetime value. And your gross margins are basically revenue minus COGS, cost of goods sold, divided by revenue. And so I won't go into the detail. There's so many different courses out there, articles that can help you understand this. But this is really just going to help you understand what's your floor price based on your operating costs. But then the second piece is, of course, understanding customer willingness to pay. And then the third piece is also understanding the market. But this piece is really important because it's that baseline for you guys. And then when you go into step 4 is that you want to build a business case. And how do you do it? I'll take a bit of time on this slide, but basically you have 5 different outlets. One is the competition, like I mentioned. So you want to understand who they are, what's their offer, how do they compare to yours, who are they targeting, do they have free trials, do they have fixed price plus employee fee or per user fee, Do they have an unlimited base plan? I mean, there's so many different things that you can ask yourself when you're looking at the competition. And then, of course, you want to see, well, how would you position yourself on that? Is your goal to be a premium? Is your goal to be low cost? Is your goal to be faster? What's going to be your competitive advantage? And that's also part of the pricing strategy. And then two is, what are the sales team saying? If you have a sales team, for those that do have a sales team, why are we losing deals? Why are we winning deals? That's going to be pretty important. And what role does the pricing play in your packaging strategy? Are we too expensive for the SMBs, for small businesses? Are we not customizable enough for a large enterprise? Could we benefit from having payment plans, upfront payment plans, 20% discount for an annual upfront, right? So there's a lot of things that you could ask your sales team from. And then there's finance. For those that aren't too close to the numbers today, you definitely want finance to be one of your partners. You want to ask them, well, how long is it taking right now to pay back on advertising? Is it 12 months, 24 months? Is it more? Obviously, more is not a good sign. Are additional services priced right? For example, at PayFit, if we have additional services that we sell, sometimes there's an impact on the customer success team, and so we need to be able to understand: is this good? Are they swamped? Are they not? And you have to also understand not just the product, but the services, the people, anything else that you're selling. Is that priced well as well? And fourth is customers. So you can't finish this business case without being able to speak to customer, understand their perceived value that you have versus your price. How do they actually measure ROI? And you can obviously ask them questions like, if you could improve something about your pricing strategy, your product offering, what would it be? And that's great if you've built like a great user profile of customers that can help, that are willing to to help you devise your strategy and also improve your product for them. And they might sometimes say some really interesting things like, well, I'm using X and X software. I'd love to be able to integrate with that, with these different players. When are you guys thinking of being able to do this? And and it'd be great to be, oh, well, that's really interesting. Why would you want to do that? What would be your objective? Oh, very interesting. How would you measure the impact on that, or the ROI? And so, well, if we were to do something like this, what kind of price would make sense? Take everything they say with a grain of salt, but this is really, really good information that you get from customers. And then lastly, it's products. So these should be your best friends. You should be really close to them when devising a product roadmap strategy. Are we looking to go into new verticals? Are we creating premium offers? There's a lot of things that you want to make sure. Are we even able to make the type of changes we want to make? We want to add add-ons. We want to move things and put them into a premium plan. Can we do that from a product standpoint, from a functionality, from an architecture standpoint? These are very important questions. And so once you've gone through those 5 different, and I'm going a bit fast because I obviously want to give people the opportunity to ask questions, and I'll be happy to share some of these slides for anyone who needs them. But once you've gone through those 5 questions, you're and teams, you're able to actually now start to build a business case in terms of, here's what we're thinking we can do, here's why, and here's the potential outcome we can get from it. And then from there, this business case, okay, Arcadia, okay, great. I'll do that. I'll send like the PDF slides so you guys will and ladies will have that without any issues for those that want it. And then step 5 is you need to get buy-in from your cross-functional leadership team. They have to be part of it. You cannot change an entire pricing strategy without getting buy-in from your product team, your marketing team, your sales team, if you have one, ops, finance. I mean, there's so many, there's a couple of teams based on the type of the business that you have that you need to have in the conversation. And so it's your role to determine who are the different folks that need to be part of this conversation. Typically, if you're a B2B, you will have sales. If you're B2C, you won't have sales, of course. You want marketing to be involved. You want product to be part of that conversation, or else, they might feel offended. You're changing pricing on the product without their saying, especially if you have that type of influence in your organization. And then customer success as well, because they know they're spending time day in, day out. Those are for the ones that have a B2B model. You'll need to be able to speak to them and hear about the pains of the customers. finance, biz ops, leadership, you name it. There's a couple folks, not a massive, large room. Shouldn't be more than 10 folks in the room if possible. But those are the people that you need to be able to make a decision. And so you want to make sure you schedule the meeting and present what you found. And then, focus on what's important for them. If you're talking to the product team, focus on what they're important on. If you're focusing on the sales team, talk to the sales team about what's going to be an in for them. They're going to be able to sell more deals, sales faster. We are creating upsell strategies with add-ons. I mean, make it really interesting for the sales team. Make it really interesting to the finance team. With this new model, we're going to be more profitable. We're going to increase our growth margins, and so really focus on different individuals in the room to be able to to let them know that you thought about them, you thought about this very well, and you know what you're doing. Even if you're not, you have a lot of resources. So I'm confident that you'll be able to get the hang of it as you go. And then 3, you got to ask for resources. And the resources is typically, you typically need a player from each of the departments. When I'm launching a pricing hunt, discovery, revision, I mean, I need finance on the table. I need marketing. I need product. I need sales. We need to be able to sit down and game plan together. And so you need specific resources of getting some of those folks, or one from each of them at least, for a certain period of time, maybe the next 3 months, as you're working on this new thing. And then when you get the green light, you assemble the team, you align on the objective, and you draft the plan, as in what is it that you guys are going to be doing, to be able to come to a decision to launch this new pricing plan. And you have that kickoff call, you get to work. And so what does it look like? Well, a couple of things. One, when you're getting cross-functional leadership, you want to make sure you find an exec sponsor. It's as in someone who's an exec in the company who cares about this, making sure we get the right pricing. And then you make sure that you can, you get the resources, or at least that they're pushing the resources and getting executive alignment outside of the room when you're not there, because you're not always going to be in the room. 2, it's also highly recommended to have like a 30-minute weekly meeting with the core team that you guys are going to set up. That you have bi-weekly meetings with the exec team as well, with the exec sponsor. That's something we do at PayFit. It's like we have the core team meeting weekly for 30 minutes, aligning, reviewing like the progress, the objective, the challenges, next steps, additional resources if we need to. So we're working on this, tackling this, and then every 2 weeks we're meeting with the exec sponsor for 30 minutes just to give that person an update. And if we have any ask, then that's a great time to ask. And Carlos, so I hope that answers your question. You said, what's the best way to get buy-in from cross-functional leadership? How are you running those meetings? Yeah, so typically one good thing to do is to kind of, have a presentation prepared, send a pre-read to anyone who's going to be in the room. One great tip is to make sure that you have, a quick one-on-ones with all the different, 6 or 7 or 8 players who are going to be in the room before the meeting. So it takes a bit of a while, but that piece is actually really, really important to make sure that everyone is aware of what you're working on. They don't get any surprises of anything you're going to say. You just want to make sure they feel heard, they feel understood, even if they have conflicting views. It's really important to say, here's what I'm working on. I know your team oversees this. We'd love to chat with you about what we found. And so you can have those small one-on-one meetings before the big meeting with everyone. And then you send a pre-read. Make it really short because the exec team is usually really busy. So typically like one executive summary and then a bunch of appendix. And so you have an exec summary and then you have a specific slide on questions and discussion points. And that's what's going to guide the conversation throughout that hour or that 45 minute. So it's really focused, it's centered. And then there's the appendix that they can have access to if they want to go through the details, or if they have questions, you can pull up the appendix whenever you need. Okay. So 6 is build and validate your hypotheses. So, at this point, you've analyzed the different conversations, you've analyzed the competition, you looked at internal data, you're interviewing your cross-functional partners, you begin to form a couple of ideas of, hey, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. And that's what you want. You want options. Doesn't have to be a lot. Usually a few is better. 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And then you want to go and validate it, which means that you have to go out there and speak to a couple clients, speak to your sales team first, speak to different cross-functional partners, get their perspective on it. If you have a customer advisory board, we have one at PayFit. It's something that this is the voice of the customer program. If you're a product marketer, you need to have very close access to customers or to users. At some point, you need to launch some sort of advisory board, which is people who raise their hands to say they want to be part of like giving feedback to improve the product, to improve the business, because they're so invested, they use it, and so on. And so those are a great group of people to reach out to and ask for questions. And then, of course, you need to make sure that they sign an NDA if you're sending any kind of confidential information, and that should be part of the program anyhow. And then 3, well, you have to make a call. You have to trust the data. You have to trust the feedback you've received, and then you need to make a decision. And so make sure that the new pricing strategy can be operational as well within your desired time frame. And so the reason I say this is that sometimes you make a decision like, oh, okay, we'll be able to let's move some of these product features, or let's create that basic feature, but then have anyone who wants custom reports will be in the next plan. These kind of things, you actually need to speak to product. So if you make a decision like that, your product isn't involved and they don't even have the bandwidth to do this in the next 3 or 6 months, you might have a problem. Or, hey, let's start to do this billing process where, if they do annual upfront and we give them 20%, okay, we can do that. But you got to actually speak with finance and billing to see if they can actually make that happen. Maybe they don't even have the software to do it. And this is why, having the right people in the room at the right time is very, very important. And so when you're making a call on your hypotheses, you want to make sure that you're thinking about all these things by speaking to the right players. And so as we're approaching the end of some of the points, it's like there are 3 dimensions that you'll need to define. You have 1, the pricing model. You have, as in like, what is the model going to be? Is it going to be a dynamic pricing model? Is it going to be fixed price plus user fee? Is it just user fee? And then you have your pricing unit. So what exactly? It looks like that wasn't updated. Sorry for that. What's the unit actually going to be? The pricing, is it $49 plus $5 per user, and so on? A good thing here is to speak to sales to get their perspective on what would work best with some of the customers, because they're on the ground selling and so on. If you don't, then speak to existing customers as well. That could be interesting. Not a lot, just a few. Your advisory board, say, hey, we're potentially reviewing this pricing strategy. It doesn't look like we're looking to make it much easier, more simple. We're looking to get your perspective. If we were to do X, Y, Z, how would that look for you? And so on. And so these are the type of questions you want to ask to understand if you don't have a sales team. 3 is also leave room for an upsell strategy. So create opportunities for people to be upsold into other plans, whether it's a whole new plan or it's add-ons, right? And so typically you want to have 2 or 3 plans because it creates that premium offer for the ones that want it, and that increases customer lifetime value. And typically at the end, you'll have an exercise that looks like this. You have potentially your free model, then you have your standard, your plus, your enterprise. That's an example for Slack if you're B2B. And you can find many, many other examples of great pricing strategies, whether you're B2B or B2C online. There's so many companies, and a lot of them show their pricing, which is great. And you have great pricing when you're not afraid to show your pricing. I think typically you'll have companies who are a little hesitant of showing pricing because they don't quite know if it's the right pricing. There's just so many unknowns, and so maybe they don't want to show how cheap they are, they don't want to show how expensive they are, whatever it is. You're not quite sure, and so you don't show it. And so typically when you have companies that are showing it, that means they know they've done the research, and they know this is probably the right price for the value for the product and so on, and it works. And so it's like, hey guys, here it is. And so that's usually a good sign. It doesn't mean it's not a good sign if you don't show the sides, but typically, nowadays you have a lot of customers doing research even before they want to speak to sales or speak to you or purchase a product. And so you want to make sure that you give them enough information to actually want to talk to you. Second is, well, you need to make a decision, right? And so at the end of the day, your 7th point is you need to crunch the numbers with your team. You need to think growth and profitability. You need to think about those upsell paths. You have to have alignment with your stakeholders, and you need to make a decision and make adjustments along the way. And so with that, when you get to launch, I mean, this is the end. It's been a 6-week research sprint or a 6-month research sprint, but at the end, you've made a decision and now it's time to go. And there was 3 steps here. There's one is to develop, 2 is launch, and then 3 is monitor. And so you're developing, whatever feature, the website, the product, sales collaterals, if you have a sales team, supporting help center articles, upsell campaigns. You want to develop all these things. Then you have your launch date. So you want to launch the new website with the new pricing strategy, the product videos, and so on, sales training if you have all these things, you're releasing it. You have your upsell campaigns you're launching, and then you monitor. How well are you doing based on previous performance? How are your conversion rates doing now? Are you having more revenue? Are you having more customers? Are your margins increasing? Or do you have upsells happening? How's the market responding? Are you competitive? And so these are great ways that you'll be able to kind of like develop, launch, monitor, but you can't do any of this before you've gone through those steps, those 7 first steps I've mentioned. Now, couple tips for monitoring performance. And so we're wrapping up in the last 5 minutes, and then we'll have Q&A. Is you have to probably do a monthly win-loss meetings for the ones that have sales teams. Sit down, review why we're winning deals, why we're losing deals. For the ones that are B2C, potentially you have follow-up campaigns when you have people who have abandoned the cart, and potentially an email following up with another offer or saying, hey, we've noticed you didn't purchase. Is there anything we can do to help? You want to make sure you have an automated, scalable way to get feedback from customers if you don't have a sales team, potentially directly to the product. What do you like about the product? Why did you purchase? Things like this. There's a lot of really interesting things that you can do. 2 is you want to review your financials with the finance team, your ops team, sales ops, business ops, whoever you have who's closest to the number, and look at it. How are we doing from traffic, leads, conversions, margins, so on. 3, you probably want to conduct sort of like quarterly business reviews just to understand how we're doing globally on a quarterly basis. And then you make your tweaks when needed. It's not a silver bullet. Not everything will work right away. But the important thing is to having your eyes on the numbers, because the numbers don't die. They don't lie. They always tell the truth. And so, quick recap. We'll open up for a bunch of Q&A. Is stay close to the numbers. Step 1. Without the numbers, you won't be able to understand what to do, what recommendations to make. Pick a place to start. At the end, you still will have 3 different places you'll have to do, whether it's understanding the market, understanding your costs, your margins, and then understanding also customer willingness to pay. 3, aim for both growth and profitability. Don't get yourself in the position where you have growth but you're not profitable, and it's putting you in a situation where you're not sustainable. You're in the red from the get-go. Or also, profitable is great, but you want to make sure you have that growth so that you're scaling and making more money in the process, for the business at least, and for your sales team and for yourselves. It's a great way to show ROI when you're working on a pricing project. 4 is build that business case. You need a strong business case, because that leads to 5, which is getting buy-in from cross-functional leadership. And your business case does need to adhere to all of the folks in the room, for product, for marketing, for sales if you have, for ops. They need to be able to see that there's something in it for them, there's something in it for the business, there's something in it for the customers. 6 is build and validate your hypotheses. So there's so many ways you can do it. I know there's a whole set of courses just on how do you validate and hypothesize and test. I mean, it's like this pricing program or class could be done in a 20-hour class across 5 days. But we don't have that. We have about 45 minutes and then Q&As. And so there's only a couple things that we can go through. But what I wanted to make sure is that you have at least an understanding of direction of things you want to ask yourself, questions you want to have answered, data you want to collect, the right type of people around the room, and also, most importantly, make sure you give yourself time, because it is a complex topic. Okay, and then you have to make that decision, and then you have to launch and monitor closely. And so I've also added a bunch of resources that I think are great. There's articles, there are books, there are podcasts, Harvard Business Review podcasts. There's a bunch of consulting firms, McKinsey, LEK, Bain, Simon Kucher and Partner. And then, of course, there's courses. And there's a great course from, of course, Product Marketing Alliance. And in that course is a 40-minute module on pricing, right? With some details, some great things in there. for you. And so there are many more also other courses, but this is a great list for you to start with. And so we'll share the slides with you, and let me know if you have any questions. And with that, it was quite a handful, but just wanted to say thank you. If you have any questions, I'm hanging out here. Ask away. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions you want to chat. I'm not selling any services. I'm a PMM in a human resource business. So this is not at all anything I'm selling. But if anyone just needs advice or you want to chat, feel free to reach out to me. I'm open to that. Send me an email if you need to. Payfit.com, unique.podar@payfit.com, and happy to hear from you. So with that, let's kind of look at some of the questions that have been popping up. There's quite a few questions, so thanks a lot, and keep putting some of these questions in there. I'll kind of go through them, and I'll probably need the help of Max if I need to unmute someone to learn more about it. But so that's a great question. So Francisca said, how do you approach pricing decisions when you enter a new country? Do you have different pricing per country? Yeah, so that's a tough question. But the reality is, yes, it'll depend, based on the product, based on the industry, based on legal restrictions. Your business model might be slightly different. It really, really depends. But typically, the right pricing strategy will be tailored to the market. So when I'm looking at PayFit right now, we have France, UK, Germany, Spain, Italy. We have the same pricing model, as in I've recommended that we kind of still stick to the same pricing model with the same features per pricing plan as much as possible. But now the pricing, the unit, right, the actual numbers are different, and they're based on the market. Because, for example, when you're looking at Spain and the economy in Spain, when you look at the competitive landscape in Spain and the disposable income of customers and so on, it might be much lower in that region, maybe not. And so pricing needs to be adapted there. Whereas if you're in France, it's a different situation. If you're in the UK, it's a very different situation as well. And so typically, I would recommend that you pay a bit of attention doing work in the different countries, because when you're expanding internationally, you'll have different local competitors. It's just important to understand the landscape there. Très intéressant, merci Zoe. And so it's important for you to just be able to make a decision based on those three things I had mentioned, which is market dynamics, operating costs, customer willingness to pay. And so if you're doing things right, pricing, at least the numbers won't look exactly the same in different countries. And go on your different competitors' website. If you have a VPN in from France and then Spain and then US, and then see if their pricing page is a bit different. That'll be a good way to look at it. All right. Thanks a lot, Nick. You said great presentation. Really appreciate it. All right. So January said, what do you think about pricing strategy for a B2B product that is completely new with no direct competitor? Whew. What do you think about pricing strategy for a B2B product that is completely new with no direct competitor? If there is no direct competitor, there's a bit of a red flag for me, just in general, because competitors typically mean that there's an appetite for this product or this service. So typically means that there's a great pool of people that are already paying for this certain service, and they're waiting for someone to be better or faster or cheaper or more premium. And so if there's no direct competitor, that kind of already raises a quick flag. So I definitely want to just invite you to really double check, are there no direct competitors? And if there aren't any direct competitors, well, okay, great. What are the substitutes? So if they're not doing this, what are they doing? So for example, in an example of PayFit, we have our direct competitors, we have indirect competitors. Direct competitors will be software firms just like us that are doing exactly what we're doing. Or you have, accountants who are helping customers, figure out their payroll and pay their customers, and they kind of go through that process. How much is it costing them to pay for, their accountant versus using a software at scale with a lot of their employees across different countries? And so that's another example. That's a good way for you to be able to gauge where should you be. Obviously, you also want to understand that I would assume the value that you're proposing is much higher. Of something that if you're in a market that doesn't really have a direct competitor, And so that would be something good to look at. The other thing, when you're looking to revise your pricing strategy, I mean, if you have existing customers, that might be interesting to speak to them. Just to obviously not everyone, your trusted customers, if you have some. Your board of advisors, those are the ones that I call. Like, I only have 6 of them, but when I ring or when we set a meeting, like, they're always there to give feedback. If not, you could potentially, if there are no direct competitors in your market, you can look at other markets and different, in other markets basically, and see, what they're doing, what the pricing strategy looks like. And at the end of the day, you won't always have it right. Typically, you don't. You kind of have to test, iterate, and potentially, you want to stay very close to your sales team to get feedback as you're testing things. If you don't have a sales team, you have to be making sure you create a bit of automation in the abandoned carts and things like that. So you have some emails following up, trying to understand why people didn't buy or so on. Okay, hope that answers your question, January. With if I had more, feel free to reach out to me so we can talk more specifically about your case, because it could really differ based on the product and the industry you're in. Okay, moving on. So, all right, this is so Tanya Lang said, since the pandemic, I've noticed companies, both B2B and B2C, that are offering extended trials or huge discounts for their products and services. What are your thoughts on this? Are you prioritizing cash flow, looking for upsells, or just maintaining a customer base? That's a great question. I mean, we went through this exercise as well at PayFit. We started to see, a lot of customers, or a lot of competitors that were offering, discounts or free trials and things that they weren't. And so, in one way, it's an interesting path to take. I think it shows, sensitivity towards, customers, towards the market. Obviously, you want to do something that is affordable for your business as well. And so, if you do a discount, it's a discount that makes sense for the business. Potentially, if you're on a recurring business model where customers are paying monthly, maybe you do a discount on the first 2 to 3 months or the first month, as opposed to a discount on the entire contract for the year. So those could be great ways for you to just, okay, maybe on the first couple of months, you're making less than expected, but you just gain a new customer, and the customer life's LTV is there for you, which is what you want, right? And so that could be an interesting way to look at this situation. I mean, obviously, at PayFit, we did, we're in this pandemic. We noticed some contraction. Thankfully, we didn't have a lot of churn, so customers are sticking with us, which is great. But of course, some customers are letting people off, and so we have a fixed price plus user pricing model. So we did lose a little bit of revenue, but we also acquired new customers, so we're all good. Like, we're still growing incredibly fast, which is great to see. And we did have to make a couple of changes on our sales team to just make sure we have offers for the first 2 or 3 months and things like that. So might be something you want to look into, Tanya. I know there's some great articles. So in the resources that I gave, I believe there is pricing strategies for uncertain times, which is a HBR podcast. So I recommend all of you to kind of listen to that podcast because it's relevant for today's world. So feel free to look at that. So Nick asks, how do you think about loss leading with a minimum viable product versus add-ons? In particular, how do you avoid customers feeling like they want to avoid add-ons to reduce their costs? I mean, that's a complex question based on the your product and your model and the customers and the market. But in general, you want to make sure that your pricing plans can stand alone, but that there's some attractive add-ons that you can have. And so one thing, going back to the Sony PlayStation 3 use case, make sure you're not selling that first unit at a loss of margin so that you're thinking you're gaining it back on the games, because that could be a problem down the line. If you guys have, I don't know if we can go back to this, where can I see this? It's in, there's a Sony, I'm looking through the slides right now. This one, Sony released a console below margins thinking they're going to make profits on the unit sold of the games, and that was really tough. And so they ended up kind of changing that approach. And so you want to make sure that you don't do that. And so your pricing plan should stand alone, and the add-on should be, the cherry on the cake, right on top of the cake, in terms of you want something faster, you want additional services so that customer success responds to you faster, for example. These are great pluses, premium add-ons that people want to buy. Or you have kind of a Dropbox model where you can buy more things later on. Do that as well. But what's most important is that your pricing plan can stand alone already in a profitable way. Let's keep going on these questions. If you have more questions, keep bringing them on. Vanessa says, amazing talk. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lola says, thank you. All right. Haytham. Haytham says, and I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name well, in B2B, is it a good idea to use pricing as a competitive advantage, specifically in competitor comparison cheats or pages? Yeah, I mean, it's again, so what's going to be your competitive positioning? Are you premium? Are you low cost? Are you faster? Do you have a bigger product portfolio? What's your game? What are you trying to position yourself as? All that's going to take into account. But, in general, I mean, if you're low cost, for sure, that's something that you can show at least as a battle card. You definitely, if you have a B2B model, you want to have a battle card for your sales team showing exactly on your top 3 competitors, what's their pricing strategy, how do you compare, where do we win and where do we lose, and you want to arm that. So even if you don't want to have that cheat page like specifically on the website for everyone to see, you want to make sure at least the sales team is armed with that, so that when they're having conversation with customers, they can have something that they can show. Peyton Williams says, regarding your where do you start slide, another option is to speak with trusted industry analysts with deep knowledge of your space. Our team did this for our platform launch a few years ago and found this to be a very helpful starting point. Originally, this started as an informal discussion. As we got deeper in discussions, we also formalized the relationship as a paid engagement. Great idea. I mean, there's so many different outlets you guys can get and ladies can go through. So 100%. Thanks so much, Peyton, for sharing that. Industry analysts is also another location that you can start with to understand how the market's doing, what you should price yourself, and so on. If you have a bit of money, there's also consulting firms, of course, that pay a pretty penny. It is going to be a pretty penny to definitely hire their services, but typically they're really, really good at what they do. But obviously, that's typically when you're more advanced and you have more disposable income for the business. All right, we got a couple more questions before we wrap up. Let me see if there's anything else. So Nathan said, our product is priced higher than our competitors. What are some techniques that you've successfully employed to justify value for premium pricing? Yeah, so you'll need quite a few things for that. I mean, if you have a premium pricing, I mean, of course, you want to have strong customer success stories showing the ROI that you've been able to provide for your existing customers. Before they were doing this, now thanks to this premium product, they can do X, Y, Z. And as a result, they're either making more money, they're doing things faster, they're more productive, which then saves them more money. So in the end, it's a numbers game. And it's especially typically if you have a premium pricing, you could still have a massive value typically that you're offering. And so you just have to be able to quantify that if you can, as much as possible. And so with that, you can talk to sales teams if you have a sales team to understand, how did you close that, that deal and so on. So you could sit down, understand what ticked, what didn't take. And you can also talk to existing customers to understand how do they measure ROI, and so because what's really going to be important to say is like, okay, you have this premium price, yes, of course, but then the value, what our customers are able to do with this product is to operate faster, is to do this, is to be able to have less headcount on the specific operation, is able to move faster into the new market, whatever it is. And so at the end, you also always have to tie it back to the ROI for the customer and show that the value that they're getting is typically going to be much, much better than your competitor, even if it's a cheaper product. So with that, I know we're ending with the last 2 minutes. Thank you so much for attending this presentation. It should be available offline. I'll let Max maybe chime in to give a quick update on that one. For those that want slides, let me know. We'll send you the PDF slides. But with that, thank you very much. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, and happy to chat with anyone who wants to chat anytime in the coming weeks or months. Max,
Awesome.
back to you.
Thank you so much, Unique. What a great presentation. Lots of audience participation, which is great. Thank you, everyone, for asking questions. The replay will be sent out. I think you will still need to be able to access the internet to see it. I'm not 100% sure you can download it, but it will be emailed to you. Yeah, thanks once again, Unique. Great presentation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day or night or wherever you are, and hoping to connect with you on LinkedIn soon and continue discussion there if we need to.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, Unique. Speak to you soon.
Take care.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and asking such great questions. The recording will be available afterwards, and head over to Unique's LinkedIn if you want these slides as well.
All right. And thanks, Max, as well, for organizing this.
You're welcome.
Take care. Bye.